Good morning, and thank you for joining me. So today I want to do something a little bit different, and I kind of want to put in perspective my sort of record reviews that I do by explaining, basically kind of my history of buying records, when I started, how I got into it, what I was into when I first discovered that different pressings had notably different sound quality to them. And, when I first became aware of audiophile pressings, and basically kind of, a very brief potted history of everything that led up to where I am now. So if we go back to 1978, 79, 80, it was around that time I started buying records. I think probably 78, probably bought my first one, which was Genesis, A Trick of the Tail. I bought that new, cost me £4.59 maybe, from W.H. Smith's in Winchester. I think at least my first four records I can remember. So it was Trick of the Tail, Wind and Wuthering, Selling Them by the Pound, and Foxtrot, all by Genesis. Foxtrot was second-hand, the other three were new, and the only reason I bought the second-hand one was because, I was a teenager operating on the earnings from my Saturday job, and that was it. So there was no, I wasn't buying it because I wanted an original pressing or anything of the sort. And that kind of continued for a good few years. I sort of became quite, obsessed, fanboyish about Genesis and Yes, Peter Gabriel's solo stuff, a few other associated acts. And so I was just, I bought just about everything that I could. Anyway, that continued for a little while, and then in the mid-80s, I had a change of career and basically started working in the hi-fi industry. I started off working in a hi-fi shop. And the cool thing about that is that day in, day out, customers would bring in their records, their preferred records, their favourite records, what they thought were their best sounding records, to listen to on, whatever piece of equipment that they were thinking of buying. So I got to hear loads of music and a real wide, variety of genres, and, music that just sounded great in the opinion of a wide variety of people. And that turned me on to, quite a few bands and that I hadn't really heard of, quite a few styles of music I hadn't really heard of. Or hadn't really, heard. So that was quite an eye-opener. And it was about that time that I discovered Mobile Fidelity, because I think we stocked them in the shop. So, okay, I'm going to show you this one, but I didn't actually buy this at the time. But here we are, Mobile Fidelity, yes, Close to the Edge. I've got dozens of MOFIs, and this whole digital thing, this is only in the last 10, 15 years. So, MOFI have been going, I don't know exactly how long, but probably best, getting on 50 years, I would think now. 40 at least, I'm sure. They were certainly going in the 80s. Anyway. That wasn't my intended first record to show, but it's, I was aware that these things were, they were super quiet. They sounded different to the original, and I perceived that as better at the time. And in many cases, I think that is the case. But there is one particular album which really turned me on to this, and that was, yes, Fragile. Now, I was listening round of friends, to some hi-fi that he was working on, and when we were just sort of playing around and listening to this, that, and the other, and he put on a track from Fragile, and it was one of my favourite albums. I knew it really, really well, and it just blew me away, the sound quality. Now mine was a green and orange, which is the Atlantic label of the vast majority of the 70s basically, and into the 80s. And I'd never seen one of these sort of red and plum Atlantic labels before, and I just couldn't believe how much better it sounded. And I knew his system, I knew my system. It was quite modest at the time, to be perfectly honest, and I couldn't believe how good that sounded. And that was when I sort of like, holy crap, I can't, that was a noticeable improvement in sound. So I went out and found this on this, its original label, the Red and Plum, and was just blown away by it. And of course that made me look for their previous album, the Yes album, and then Time in a Word, and Yes, all on this label, which all just blew away the later reissues that I had. And they weren't really reissues, they were just later pressings, frankly. But I was going on label there, I wasn't looking at matrix numbers. And you can go on labels, to be perfectly honest. It's a much simpler way of doing it than matrix numbers, but it's a lot less precise, if you like, because a label will last for several years, depending on the label. And that's really what I want to do today, is just sort of take you through my journey of how I discovered this, because I know there's a lot of people that think, it's all a load of rubbish, that a record's a record, or a CD's a CD, or a recording is a recording, and it's us idiots that talk about the difference between pressings and all the rest of it are a complete basket cases. So put that one to one side, or I'll never get to the end of this story. So from there, I bought the early Yes albums and was just absolutely knocked out by them. So then, my brain started ticking over, and like, oh, holy crap, who else was on Atlantic around that era? Suddenly, of course, springs to mind Led Zeppelin. So that was the next mission, and I hunted down Zeppelin 1, 2, and 3, which were all available on that record, that label in their first guise was all on that label. And back in the day, this would have been mid to late 80s. I was doing this. I actually came across someone who was selling off his record collection, and he had basically bought records new, taped them to cassette, filed away the record, and played the cassette. So I got Led Zeppelin 1, 2, and 3, all on that label, so all very early pressings, and all literally played once. I think I paid £100 for the three of them, and subsequently being offered a lot more than that for each. So that was my initial kind of introduction into how the sound quality of labels, the sound quality has changed over time, and how you can kind of easily note that by looking at the label. So I then went through my other favourites. So obviously we get to Genesis. So I want to talk a little bit about Genesis. I don't believe the differences are as profound as with the Yes, but now Genesis. I think that my copy of Foxtrot, this isn't the original that I bought all those years ago. This is a subsequent one, but this is what you call a large hatter, and you can see here that the Mad Hatter's the spindle hole is sort of in the bow tie and alongside the hand. The small hatter he finishes quite a bit above that, and the large hatter lasted up until 1974. So certainly Foxtrot and Selling England, the original pressing would be on that label. Original inners are also very, they're nice things to get. With Foxtrot, a way of telling it's an original is the spine writing. I've got no idea whether this is going to work, but the spine writing here is red, and that's another way of telling on this particular copy. But that large Hatter label, that came in 72, and this is a really, really good sounding version of Foxtrot, so I've got no reason to want to change that. And let me put that somewhere else. There we go. But what, up until 72 on Charisma, what we had is what was known as the Pink Scroll label. And Trespass and Nursery Crime. This was the original label for these two issues. I've got both of them on the label, and again they sound really, really, really good, and they really do sound better than subsequent pressings. In fact, my original sort of purchase batch of Genesis LPs would have come out on the blue label, which was introduced in 1979, I believe. So, the difference between a small Hatter and a large Hatter isn't quite as big, but the difference between a Pink Scroll and a large, they get better. The earlier the better, basically. But the difference between a 1972 pressing of a 1972 album and a 1980 pressing of a 1972 album, it is dependent upon label, but it's quite profound. So, I was by the mid 80s, I was really kind of getting into this, and it was about so it was that kind of time that I discovered these mobile fidelities as well and started buying those. I've got mobile fidelity. I've got Genesis Trick of the Tail. I've got Pink Floyd Medal. I did have Dark Side of the Moon. I'll get onto Dark Side later, but there's it was something that I'd started collecting, and it was good. As years went by, I became more aware of other labels, and I'll just flick through a few really quite quickly. So Island is another label that I got into Jethro Tull really early on, and they were on Chrysalis, but that wasn't their original label. They were on initially they were on Island. So I think this is probably my first exposure to Island records. But the first album, this is here, this was released in 1968. That's the original Island label. Now, I mean, people call them different things. I'd call that the black and orange I logo, I as in EYE. So that's the original. Now that was introduced in 67 and discontinued in 69, but these sound noticeably better than subsequent records. They really, really do. And I've got free albums. Goodness me. Nick Drake. Well, I haven't actually got any Nick Drake on that label. That's they're kind of rocking horse shit type labels, type records. They're very expensive, very collectible. I'm just going to show this one because this is kind of quite an interesting. So this is the second Island Pink label, which I call the Black Block. But this was only from, I think, September until November 69, something like that. And frankly, this is the only album I know that's on it. Unhalf Brickling, which was, I think, the third, Fairport Convention album. Great album. But again, really, really, really beautiful pressings. I mean, those early Islands, they are so dynamic, so, you feel like everything's turned up to 11. And then what came after that is again the pink eye, I call it, but the letter I rather than the you see what I mean. It's actually a white eye, but on a pink label. And this was in operation from 69 to 70, and then they went to the pink rim, which is just what I call it, pink rim. It's just a pink rim, white label with the palm tree logo on it. And that ran for about 5 years, from 70 to 75. And they're still very, very good, but I do believe that they get progressively better as you get earlier. But if you can't get an original pink label Ireland just because it's out of budget or you can't find one, I mean, my King Crimson Court, the Crimson King, is a pink rim because an original in mint or near mint condition is just outside of my budget. But they are, and that's the same I'd say with my Nick Drake, frankly. But they're very good. They're kind of 9 out of 10, whereas the originals are sort of 10 out of 10, I would say. I think just a couple more things to just mention before I kind of move briefly into other genres, because most of my upbringing was with these bands and these labels. But here we are, Van Morrison Moondance. Now this is a US original, and I like this because it comes in a beautiful gatefold cover. And this was this was Van Morrison was my finding of these early sort of olive green Warner labels. And again, these precede the Burbank labels, or whatever you want to call them. Again, they sound really, 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 really good. So thoroughly recommended. And again, it sort of turned me on to, if we go for country of origin, the first 4 or 5 Van Morrison albums were actually, he was living out in the States, and I would consider country of origin for the first few to be US. And certainly the covers are nicer, and these are really, really great sounding pressings. So I'll just pop this one away. I'm trying not to let this video go ramping on too much, and but here we are, same album. Now this is a UK original, and the UK originals. I'm not sure exactly what year this changed. I think 1970 was the last year of this orange label. So I think halfway through 70 they changed to the same label as the US have got. But again, really beautiful sounding pressings. And it's, I'm using the labels as a guide because it's easier, remembering, or Pink Island or Green Warner or Orange Warner, Large Hatter is a darn sight easier than remembering, individual matrix numbers of records. It's an easy kind of rule to follow, to remember. So by this time my collection is really kind of building, and as the years go by, I'm replacing records with, I've still got 2 of these, and I probably haven't got more than 3 or 4 of many records, but there have been times where I've got up to well over 10. And that was really as I moved into jazz. Before I go into the jazz, I just want to finish up. I mentioned Dark Side earlier. So this is my current reference Dark Side, and this is the there's the postcards falling out. This is what they call the solid blue triangle, and it's so this is an individual label specifically, you recognise this because on all subsequent issues, this is just the outline of the triangle rather than the whole thing filled in solid blue. But as I say, I've had the MOFI of this, I've had all sorts of issues, and this is the only one I have now. To my ears, it's the only one I need. It's the best one. It's the bass just goes deeper, and it's more dynamic. It's more there. It really is worth having. But it is one of those. It's getting very, very hard to find, and when you do find it, it's getting very, very costly. So, just to show you, there's some posters here. I won't bother opening up, and the original inner, which was a black polylined inner. So, these things are all very lovely. I'll put that away later. And whilst on the subject of Floyd, here's my Piper, flip back cover, and this is a mono one. And I say these are my real favourite inner sleeves. MA Recordings make them. And just to wrap up on the rock, really, this is what you would look for here is the blue Columbia logo and name, and that denotes an original Columbia of this era, and just more vitality, more there, more everything, really, more music, more Pink Floyd pipering up the gates of dawn, basically. Now, I'm not sure where I think we'll move into jazz, but I just want to say that this. Okay, so this still continues. Now, this is the example of something at the total other end of the scale. Obviously, Yes is a huge favourite band of mine, and I've got pretty much everything they've ever done on vinyl, and still buy them. I don't quite know why, because since about 1980, I've really gone off the band. I've certainly seen them a few times since then, but it's not the Yes I know and love. But anyway, I quite recently bought this Yes Union 30 Live, which is a box set. There you go. You've got stickers, you've got a CD, you've got a replica concert program, and all the rest of it. And I think it's 5 LPs, which are. If the box is stupidly tight, the LPs are stupidly tight in the cover. I won't bother taking them out. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I bought this, and I think I've only played one side of one of the albums, and it went straight into the out pile. It is shockingly bad. Now, I've got a DVD video of this concert, and honestly, you can put the DVD on, turn the screen off so you're not being distracted by the images. And the DVD sounds noticeably better than this. This is shockingly poor. So, it really is a thing. The relative quality of different pressings is a very, very real thing. We're not making it up. We're not talking out of our arses. It's a very, very, very real thing. Now, I'm going to pop into jazz. I've just got one more record I've pulled out here. Folk is another love of mine, and I just wanted to mention this. Transatlantic Records, Pentangle were on Transatlantic, quite a few other good folk acts. And this is the album of, mid-60s, so about 1970, I think. I haven't got a record exact time on it, but this white with purple Transatlantic label. This is a phenomenal sounding record. It's absolutely beautiful. I remember when I got my Aesthetics IO photo stage well over 10 years ago, this was the first record I played on it. It's funny how your memory, or my memory, can remember all sorts of crazy things like that. Playing Fragile at Chris Binns's, and it's kind of a photographic memory almost for certain things. And what did I do 10 minutes ago? Couldn't tell you. So that's one of the ways of life. Anyway, I want to just get into jazz now, because that's been that an extension of the same journey. And I would say that my love for Miles Davis drove a lot of this. Now, Birth of the Cool. Like the Yes, Fragile, this was another one that really was an eye-opener for me, because I've been into Miles Davis for decades. I'd certainly got into Miles in the 80s, and this was very iconic album of his. And I had I think it was a Japanese reissue, I don't know, but I just couldn't get into it. Absolutely couldn't get into it. And then as we were in the I suppose the early 2000s by this point, I was I got an original, well, not an original, I got an early US pressing, then I got a slightly earlier one, and each pressing it got more and more the sound quality became better, but also I actually understood the music. It kind of made sense, because I think it's fair to say this is bebop, is it? I don't know my jazz subgenres really, but it's kind of quite challenging. It's not easily to get into. And eventually, I think the next best one I had, it was a black label with sort of like a rainbow around the edge, which I'm sure was the second issue. And then I got this, which is the I believe the first issue. And it just sounded superb, and frankly, I got the music, and until this point, I really didn't. I had it in my collection as a sort of a Miles Davis completist thing, but this is the first time I actually got this record and really could access, enjoy and understand the music. So it's like I mentioned in my review of the Mingus mobile fidelity, which I'll put a link to here. And I know I was misled about the provenance of the process, but it's again you get a really good pressing of a record, it can actually help you understand the music, or conversely, if you get a bad pressing, sometimes it's so bad you just don't get the music. Now, just continuing on Miles, and I'm going to whip through here, but Miles did a whole, before moving to Columbia, he did a whole series of records on the Prestige label, and they're recorded by Rudy Van Gelder, and I see this one's got RVG written and stamped in a groove. These have got a deep groove that I'll get to when I'm talking about the Columbias, but these are just to die for, frankly. And I haven't got all of them. I think he did about 10 records maybe in a sort of an 8-year odd period whilst working with Prestige, and I've got nearly all of them, but they are to die for. And I've heard reissues of some of these, and I think Allen Productions did some, which I haven't heard those, and I'd be very interested too, because for a long time I was just an original is what you want, that's it. So anyway, Prestige, original Prestiges, they're just they're as good as original Blue Notes in my book. And then we're going to get onto Columbia now. Time Out, Dave Brubeck Quartet. This is actually an album that I think I had 13 different copies of at one point, and I did do a real in-depth analysis of the sound quality of the various pressings. But I just wanted to pull this one out because obviously that was a key thing, a key moment of discovery about the various pressings. But you know, this is what you call the Columbia 6i label. Now this one doesn't have a deep groove. I don't know if you can see. It's pretty. There is a ridge here, but it's not a groove. Now this was the I've made a note of this. This was so the 6i label with a deep groove ran from 58 to 60 on the stereo. Obviously stereo didn't come out till 58, and then they removed the deep groove, which is this, and that ran from 60 to 62. So you know, my Bob Dylan's first album is on this label, for instance. In the case of monos, which I'll come and show you next, if you just remember the black and red orientation of this outer ring here. So this is a fantastic album. What a great cover. And this is a mono. So you can see the black and the red's the other way around. But more interestingly, this is also a deep groove, and you can see there quite a visible, it's about 2 millimeters wide and 1 millimeter deep, I guess, groove here. Now, so obviously, as I say, stereo only was introduced in 58. So the deep groove 6i was ran from 55 to 60 when they lost the deep groove. So in total, the 6i label ran from 55 to 62. And in my opinion, they sound bloody brilliant. After that, they went to a 2i, which is you just remove that one and that one. So you've just got one of these I logos here and here. And they still sound really good. It's very similar to the other labels that we've discussed. You know, it's not that they're terrible. You know, a 2i, I would say, is kind of equivalent to an Island Pink rim. You know, it's more a case of the label denotes the period in time, and the period in time sort of pretty much denotes the quality of the pressing. And now, really, there's just two extras that I wanted to throw in, and these are quite random. I haven't mentioned clef and verve and mercury, but you know, a good 10 years ago, I had a very significant health issue. I could only sit in one chair, and wasn't central to my system. And I became obsessed with listening in mono, and cut a long story short, I kind of collected all of the Billie Holidays on the Clef label. They blew me away. They were amazing sound quality. Now, Clef was started by and run by a chap called Norman Granz, who had previously worked at Mercury. After Clef, he set up Verve, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And then after Verve, he ran Pablo. Now, here in the UK, Pablo's a funny label because I think it's perceived as a budget kind of brand, and you don't find them very often. But whenever you do, they're cheap. You know, they're normally £2, £3, £4, £5, £10 absolute most. Now, I just find Norman Granz's recordings fantastic, and the Pablo records, I just think they are unbelievable sound quality for the money. They're so live. It's you know, absolutely great. So again, in terms of labels, and this is a whole record label I'm talking about, not a specific label design. Basically anything I see on Pablo, I'll buy, because they're just stunning recordings. And then just one last one to finish on that same note. This is another one. It's like, you know, they're kind of sleepers almost. And this one's Melodyia, which is the Russian state label, or maybe I should say the Soviet Union state label. Particularly not PC, I guess, at the moment, with their totally illegal and unjustified war. But Melodyia. again, I just buy the whole bloody lot of them. Anyone I see, and frankly, I'd say the same about Supraphon and Eterna, and these are labels. They're like state labels of the old Soviet republics, and they, you know, I think it's just the technology they had. You know, they were using old valve technology at the time, and their recordings are, you know, they're kind of hit and miss, but again, it's like the Pablo. These are perceived as like, you know, low quality, and you do get quite a fair few where the vinyl itself is very low quality, like it's, you know, recycled with paper label shards in it and all the rest of it. But occasionally, you know, but sometimes, you know, you get a bad one, and often you get a good one. But the recording quality is often absolutely excellent. And you know, this one's no exception, unbelievably natural. So that's you know, kind of postscript. But Pablo and Melodyia, they're two things I would say, just if you see them, they're normally cheap, you may as well just buy them, because they're probably quite good. Anyway, I certainly haven't covered all labels. I haven't really delved into classical at all, not much into jazz, but I think that gives us sort of a rough overview of how I got into collecting labels and why. And it really, 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 all the way down the line is about the sound quality. That's what drove it. You know, and this was a great example of you know, until I got this original, I just didn't really like the music, because the pressing, the quality issues were getting in the way of the music. And it's not all the story of like, oh yes, everything's bloody marvellous and buy it. Because as I say, by the same token, there are some things which are just utterly shocking, and this is one of them. So I hope that was interesting. I hope it would prove helpful. And you know, I might revisit this in more depth. You know, maybe if it would be of interest to sort of do a more in-depth analysis of you know, label by label, maybe, you know, do an Island video or a Charisma video or a Columbia video or you know, or even by artist, you know, a Miles Davis video or whatever. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed and like what I do, please hit the subscribe button. It all helps the YouTube algorithms. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you very, very much indeed. Bye for now. Bye.